Hello everyone. This short presentation is meant to share a few good ideas and strategies that have helped me with the challenge of teaching remote programming bootcamps. So I could say they are my own little best practices. My first principle is engaging the students into a lot of grunt work on conditionals, loops, implementing simple algorithms on arrays, way before launching into the complex, beautiful world of object-oriented programming and design. There are many reasons why I do this. First, I believe that this kind of work is extremely useful to develop the mental muscle to be a problem solver, which ultimately is what a programmer must be. Another reason is that I've often seen and examined students who could recite quite correctly all the theory and principle of object-oriented programming, but then are astoundingly unable to code a solution to a simple problem like the classic FizzBuzz, which requires only a loop, a few conditionals, and a bit of logic and precision. As for my teaching style, even for the theory, I try to avoid slides as much as possible. Especially in a remote environment, there is nothing more soporiferous and sleep-inducing than a long PowerPoint presentation, just like the one I'm doing now. So, while using slides is certainly time efficient, I believe that using live code is far more learning efficient. I also try, whenever possible, not to present beautiful solutions to problems that the students still didn't have the time to encounter and think about. I try to start every lesson with questions, not with answers. Thinking over and discussing the questions will lead to the problems, and this will make the solution more interesting and memorable and keep the students engaged. My core technique to maximize student engagement is having students share their own screen and do most of the work and explanations on their machines, not on mine. I found that this is very useful. Sure that the students are always in a state of active learning and participation and not just watching a lesson. I try to foster maximum participation both during lesson and teamwork. But we all know that a full class has way too many students to allow for efficient teamwork. So another trick I use is splitting the class into a few houses of about 6 students each. I like to add some gamification to this process, so I push the houses to compete against each other, awarding points for various accomplishments. I also nominate a head for each house to teach and encourage leadership in the form of servant leadership. And being the geek that I am, I get inspiration for the house names from movies, and lately I found that the Harry Potter houses work quite well. Finally, I ask the students to choose a single Zoom background for each house. This helps to easily access to which house each student belongs, and the icing on the cake is that it creates a uniform Zoom background that is free from the distractions of many widely different backgrounds. From a technical standpoint, a precious tool to promote teamwork is certainly a code versioning and sharing tool like Git. So I introduce Git from the very beginning, otherwise the students will find other less efficient ways to collaborate, sending files to each other over different media, and then their projects will end up looking like some kind of Frankenstein of patches. With Git, instead, it's easy to establish a workflow where there is only one project and the student who's sharing the screen that day first work on his branch and then merges the code into the main branch at the end of the session, while the other students have the choice to just watch and then pull the code or work along on their own branch of the same project. Having a good foundation with Git will also avoid the problem that for some students the teamwork might degenerate into watching more advanced students do stuff and think that this will prepare them for a stage or a contract as a software developer. And of course this is not true. I wish we could all become tennis champions just by watching Wimbledon. So I always remind my students to give their own concrete contribution to the project, and in case they have to work together, to make sure that the weaker students are the one doing the typing, even if this ends up slowing down the group. Mock coding interviews and theory questions are also a crucial ingredient to prepare a bootcamp student for success. Almost every day I start by asking questions on the material we covered up to that day, and going back to gamification, I make the student play games, house versus house, where students ask questions to each other and get eliminated when they cannot answer a question properly. I think that continuous questioning is very important because it helps check and assess student preparation much better than the occasional quiz. It also helps to reinforce learning as it is a form of constant review, and also because sometimes students can think they understood something but they actually didn't. And failing in trying to explain a subject is a great way to see and check how deeply you really understand that subject. Finally, being able to express yourself with precise technical terms and fluidity is an acquired skill that needs a lot of time and practice to be developed in order to be able not to be scared of job interviews, but actually be able to impress your interviewer. If you analyze my best practices, you will find that they form a sort of extreme teaching. A bit like extreme programming is built on the idea that if something works well for software development, then you should push it to the extreme. I take all that I think has pedagogical value, push it to the extreme, and strongly implement it from day one. I ask a lot from my students. I am very demanding. I aim for perfection, knowing that I will get a lot less than perfection, but then it will still be a good result. Expecting less will be doing injustice to my student potential. At the same time, I strive to establish a very relaxed and informal environment where people can have fun learning, and making mistakes is not only tolerated but encouraged, as we learn a lot by making a lot of mistakes. During this process, I'm guided by the principle that if you trust people, encourage them, and make them feel talented, strong, and competent, they will eventually overcome their imposter syndrome, work harder, and actually become talented, strong, and competent. Well, these were my 2 cents on the matter of teaching coding bootcamps. I hope you found them at least somewhat interesting. And if you want to see them in action, well, I do love teaching internationally.